Hey guys, you're checking out episode 17 with Luke Ryan in studio. And you know what I should say, Chris, is that I check out the numbers, and I could already tell you this episode's going to do well because it seems like this audience, although we cover a wide range of things, they like the special operations veterans. Our biggest episodes really are Jack Murphy, Pat McNamara, and Dale Comstock, like by far. So yes, I like bringing on musicians and actors and all different other people, but this audience gravitates towards the Spec Ops guys, Chris.
Well, that's just who we have right now. I guess that's your realm, brother. I really don't know. You know, I don't pay attention to it. You say, hey, we've got this many followers. Is that good? Okay. So yeah, Luke, him and I have done some stuff together with his write up with Coffee or Die magazine.
Yeah, which we'll get to. We'll get to that in a little bit.
And Luke's a ranger. So, and he's actually a real ranger. He's from Battalion.
Yes,
so
I want to get to all this on the show, but I just wanted to let the audience know who Luke is. But we'll get to all that. But no, this audience loves those episodes, so I don't want them to think we're abandoning Spec Ops guys by bringing on other people. We're going to make sure we regularly have these guys on.
Hey, brother, I'm okay. We do whatever. If we don't have to always get HGH guys that shave their arms. we don't have to get Pat Mac guys every time. I'm good with having other people.
The audience likes Pat. But yeah, with that, Fort Scott Munitions is sponsoring every episode. We love those guys. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standards of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as directly online through FortScottMunitions.com. And as I've said before, follow them on Instagram at Fort Scott Munitions because they have some great people working with them. For example, Chris, like Hank Strange, I've yet to meet him. I know we're going to get him on the podcast at some point, but like that guy's awesome.
He's I've met him once, and I've met his wife once as well. Very good people, just down to earth people that Fort Scott, if they're going to have anybody rep them, that's who they want, is guys like Hank and his wife. His wife's like my wife. His wife's the one that runs the show. I talked to Hank for like 15 seconds, but his wife was the boss. So you could tell right away. And that's tremendous. That shows some humility, and it shows that I believe your priorities in the right spot. And that's what Fort Scott does. They bring people on that have priorities, have ethics, and it shows in their product, and it shows people that they rep them. They just made a mistake with me somehow. I don't know. But no, it's fantastic. No, Hank will be great. And I can't wait to get on Hank's show too. I hope I get a chance to do that, which his wife said I would. So if his wife said it, then I know it's set in stone. It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, we'll get him on at some point for sure. But once again, use exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast, FortScottMunitions.com. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. With that, we got Luke Ryan in studio. Let's get right into it.
On the microphones, pure and uncensored American straight talk. Never quit. You're locked and loaded with Chris Peranto and Ian Scotto. This is the Battleline Podcast.
So as promised in studio, Luke Ryan, and there's so much to say about your background, man. For one, I've worked with Luke for years, and this is my first time meeting him in person, which is just crazy because I feel like I've met all the journalists I've worked with. But Luke is an Army Ranger combat veteran, 4 deployments to Afghanistan, retired as a team leader. Associate editor of Coffee or Die magazine, which is presented by Black Rifle Coffee, coffeeordie.com. Author of The Gun in the Sheath, which you have right in front of me here. Poetry by an Army Ranger. That's available right now on Amazon.com. You got a new book in the works. And I mean, there's so much more to say that I've written down here. You've written stuff for the New York Times. You grew up in Pakistan and Thailand as the son of aid workers. I don't even know where to begin, but it's great to have you in studio and finally meet you, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Chris, I should ask, was there any crossover with you guys? Did you guys ever serve at the same point?
No, he's a young buck. I'm older than Dirk Brown. Luke, yeah, when did you got in? When I got out the Army in 2003 and started contracting. You got in after that, right? I know we discussed it once.
I finished high school in 2007.
See, I keep hearing I was in junior high, dickhead. Yeah, I know. I got you.
I got into battalion in 2010.
Yeah, so really, I'm old. That just tells you how old I am and how young Luke is. So no crossover there, Ian. Just in spirit. Just in spirit.
Yep.
But yeah, there's so much that you've done in terms of, as I said, the writing and all that. And I think you have just such a versatile background. When people think Army Ranger, they do not think a guy who writes poetry or what you're doing right now at Coffee or Die. And I should say, you guys have a great team over there between like you and Marty Skovland. Chris and I would both agree, like solid guys.
Yeah, I mean, Marty really leads is the captain of that ship, and he's just doing an awesome job. It's great to work as his associate editor. I mean, it's kind of, we get to tell these stories that you don't necessarily see come across the regular headlines, or you might see them on the regular headlines, and we get to attack it at a new angle to really find like the meat behind a story. So it's been really great working there and just trying to like find these new and interesting and compelling angles to stories that, you know, I mean, for example, you hear a lot of like these big news headlines that you might see over and over on your aggregate news cycle or whatever. But, you know, like to tell the story of a guy who spent who spent a good portion of his career with the same military working dog, him and the handler and his canine, and like just their sort of life and work together, and then the dog retiring, and then, you know, having to, when the dog got old, having to put the dog down, and like this emotional journey, you know, being able to tell that and talk to this guy and like tell the stories of the people on the ground. That was just one example, you know, stories like that, you know, try to get to the meat behind these stories. And Marty really, it's not that he allows that, it's encouraged and expected. And I definitely appreciate that. You know, it's been really great, and my body of work is slow expanding there, but it's quality, and I really enjoy it, and I enjoy being able to flesh out these stories that are compelling and interesting to me. You know, ground level stuff. Yeah, it's been great. I'm also the social media manager at Black Rifle Coffee, so I've been enjoying working at that. It's a somewhat new position. I've been there for a few months now, but it's been really great. I mean, they've been good to me, and yeah, it's a new chapter in my life, and I've been diving into it. You know, trying to get up to speed. Those guys run at 100 miles an hour, and I'm catching up. Yeah.
Well, you know, we said it before, and I know Ian said it, Jack and Murphy have said it. You know, Ranger Battalion, it breeds, and it does breed a different individual. It doesn't. Guys aren't when they get out that like yourself and like Marty. I always picture Marty still driving down the road in a VW hippie van, because that's the kind of guy. But he was solid. You know, it's just It's an eclectic group of people. It's not guys that get out and still want to go work with Rogue America and want to show their CrossFit stuff. And that's not Ranger Battalion. When we're there, well, definitely guys are fit because they have to be fit.
Yeah.
Even the fat guys are fit. Yeah. But that's not their thing. Jack collected comic books. When I was there,
Yeah.
I was a huge baseball card collector. I like to read. I did. You write poetry.
Yeah.
That's Ranger Battalion. Yes, we've got our, and this is a term of endearment though. We got our Jethros from South Georgia. We do. We got those there battalion. You got them.
Yeah.
And they're hardcore. But you also have guys that on the other end of the spectrum are not. But when we all come, it's awesome at battalion. When everybody comes together, it just all works. It all works, no matter the personalities but that's what I love battalion is you just saw so many different personalities there. But when it was time to go to work, everybody was, whether you're a pipe hitter or not, off your job, which most of us weren't. When it was time to go to work, we all were, and it was fantastic, and the teamwork, and that's different from regiment. It really is. And being with the agency and working with SEALs and working with the guys that were former unit guys or current unit guys, so it's just. It is different, and it's special, and that's why I don't like to be lumped in. I know I don't mind when people say it. I don't say anything, but when they say Rangers and they say 75th, it's just unless you've been there, you really don't see that there are so many different sort of mindsets there, and we may not all get along when we're off. Because of the different things that we do, we may break into different directions. But once we're there at the barracks, once we're there at the battalion, whatever we are at, it all comes together, and it's amazing to see. Like Luke's a perfect example, Marty's a perfect example, Jack's a perfect example. But then you've got Matt Best on the other side of the spectrum, which is completely on what you might think a Ranger would be.
But he does work for Matt Best technically.
Yeah, I know, and that's what's so on. I know. I know Evan. I know Matt. I've known Rocco. Those guys were all privates when I was leaving battalion. That just shows how old I am. Those guys were new scroll guys when I had my tab when I was a team leader leaving. But that's the beauty of it is that. I would say Matt, and again, I just know Luke from what we've done together, but I would say I would put money on it if you had me bet that yes, personality wise, you're completely different just from me speaking to both you and I am friends with Matt. But when it came to go to work, nobody cared about those personality differences. We're just Rangers and we're together and we're there to do whatever mission we need to do. And it's amazing. And I just love seeing it because this makes me smile and I'm very proud to be part of that 75th Brotherhood. And then you got idiots like me, and I'm like the redheaded stepchild. Not literally, you are, Ginger. You're actually the redheaded step, but I figure it to the redheaded stepchild. Like Tano, he's just an idiot. But I'm glad you're doing well, brother.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think all of what you're talking about, I mean, all of those different mindsets all orbit around the same thing, and it's accomplishing, the sort of known phrase is accomplishing the mission, whatever the singular mission is. But I think in Ranger Battalion, it's very fleshed out to cover every aspect of your life. And, whether that the mission is to take a hill or knock out a bunker, or whether the mission is to stay up all night and mop some stupid floor, that's like whatever you are set out to do, that's what you dedicate your life to this thing, this craft, this moment, whatever it is, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. And I think a lot of Rangers really thrive with that mentality. And the trick is to apply that to civilian side to these new things that you're doing, to be able to to take those things and to say, okay, I'm going to take that same mentality and apply it to like this math class that I'm in, or apply it to, I like to write. I am like a writer. There's a huge business side that goes alongside to writing that I don't necessarily like very much. But if it's what I'm deciding to do, then that's something that I need to dedicate all of my efforts to and focus on and be successful at. Otherwise, I can't expect the entire mission to be a success if, I'm lacking in a certain area. Whether I want to do it or not is like, it doesn't matter. You just got to do it. If you got to do it, you got to do it. And I think a lot of Rangers thrive when they are able to make that, adaptation into civilian life.
No, you're spot on. It's the 100% and then some stands tall with everyone
right.
That's been at 75th. And you and I discussed that when we did that article about why are guys not being able to transition once they get out of the military. And that's where I said, well, most 75th guys do, and that's because they just focus on whatever mission is next. The guys that don't are the ones that don't. They think the mission is still an Army mission. It's still what we're doing in the unit. No, your mission is now, whatever mission that may be, and nobody's telling you what that is. Now you've got to figure it out for yourself. But like you just said, if you're going to do it, though, and once you figure that out, you go 100%, and you do it the best of your ability, even if it's mopping floors. I prided myself on mopping floors and shining floors. So like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the best I can at it and make that thing shine.
Yep.
But brother, you hit the nail on the head, and I hope people out there are listening, and those veterans out there listening that are struggling right now. Don't look at your past. You did that. You're awesome. Look at that as far as learning. Now figure out what that new goal is and then go for it. And it's like an op order. Here's your op order. All right, Go ahead, knock it out and go 100%.
And I should throw out there the article that you're talking about is Boone and Tonto on moving forward after Benghazi attack. And you did that last year for the anniversary of the attack on Benghazi. You got to interview both Chris and Boone.
Yep. Yeah, no, and it was great. I mean, and that's something that I wanted to focus on. Actually, just going back to why I like writing there and all this stuff and trying to get these new sort of angles on stories that people care about. I mean, I want to know, like, okay, I mean, this is a story that many of us are familiar with. Certainly our readers are familiar with. What are these guys doing to move forward? What are they doing now? What is this? What new mission have they latched onto? And I was really interested in, because back then, before I wrote the article, I didn't know what the answer to that was. Sure. And I was interested to know. I wanted to know. I mean, I write stuff that I would want to read. So like, it was just, I think it's powerful to me, and it's inspiring to see other people, go through difficult experiences and then to come out and to say, hey, like, everybody comes out with these kinds of things with scars, and they're all unique to themselves, and they're all unique to situations. Yeah. But like, what do we do now? How are we going forward?
Yeah, I was going to say it's important to spotlight that, because on the other side of the narrative of 22 veterans a day killing themselves, unfortunately, which I don't know if it's completely accurate from the stuff I've read, but
sure,
it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 22. It's too many.
Yeah.
But there's just as many guys, if not more, thriving and saying, hey, I'm going to use this to my advantage. Yeah. And I'm going to, if I could get through this, I can get through anything. Actually, for me, working with Chris has calmed me down at times, because behind the scenes, there's been times with this podcast where something goes wrong. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but there's been a few things that have happened, and Chris will be like, it's all good, man. And I realize it's because I've experienced some things in my life, but nothing like Chris. So it puts things into perspective. You never say it, but you're like, look, I was waiting 13 hours under fire. This is a cakewalk. And it makes me realize, because I come from the world of radio, where if something goes down or there's an issue, it's like, what the fuck is going on here? And people are freaking out. And for you, you're like, this is nothing. We'll be okay.
But that's the truth. You just let it, and you're awesome. You roll with it all. For a New Yorker, you're probably the most laid back New Yorker. Now we're putting that in perspective. You're still 100 times more gypped up than somebody here in Nebraska.
Probably,
But you're still a laid back New Yorker for the most part. You keep a calm head after you spin up to about 100. You can calm yourself down real quick.
It's partially because of you, man. It really is, because I've worked with other people who every situation is a major panic. And like I said, it says a lot about the same type of thing that Luke wrote about you, that, you thrive to go on to that next mission because of what you've been, what you've experienced.
You do put things in perspective, and that's why Luke's been successful. That's why Marty's been successful, and they're both writers. Like he said, there's parts of it that he doesn't like. I'm sure some of it is that where he has to deal with people. And Luke, you can tell us a story. I'd like to hear one, but of somebody that you've dealt with that was completely high strung. And I'm saying civilian again. I'm not using that as a derogatory term, but I'm saying civilian that just totally out of control. And you kept a cool head, and maybe even calmed them down just by your actions, and not maybe it may have been unintentional. Sometimes for me, it's just unintentional. It's like, it'll be all right, man. We'll get through it. We'll re-record it. It's no big deal.
And one big thing I just learned from just, I guess, combat in general is that, like, I've always been a generally, I think, more or less calm person. But one thing that I learned, and that I have to keep telling myself, and I've faltered in this area from time to time, is that outside of combat, problem solving, freaking out, allowing anxious sort of feelings to bubble up, being driven by your own fear or your own anxiety or whatever, it's easy to let that happen. But it's also easy for that lie that to sneak into your brain that tells you that that fear is rational and helpful, because it's not. And in combat, I can't speak for everyone else, but for myself, terrified, it's scary, but the difference is like a lot of training and knowing what to do and knowing how to do it makes it so that fear just doesn't affect your hands pretty much. So you are now, you can be effective and it just doesn't affect you. You put it in a corner of your brain. Maybe you need to deal with it later. In the civilian world, you can sometimes deal with it now. But it just freaking out, whether it's a business situation or, whether it's corporate business or you're trying to start a business or whatever it is. When you're coming up across all these obstacles, having these anxious feelings about a problem or this fear that's coming into your head, it's not useful. And so trying to train your brain to put that to the side and, do things that are useful, problem solve. That's just
it's important, bro. That's as being a private, when you're an untapped private going into battalion. Like I said, I'm dating myself. I was RIP. You were probably RASP.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah. But the thing is that. And we did get hazed. I'm sure you guys did a little bit. You don't have to talk about it. I'll say it now because most of my guys that I work with, the commanders are since gone, so I can talk about it. But it was necessary because that's what got you ready. That fear of that tab spec 4 breaking down your door at the barracks and smoking your bags when he was drunk, and you're hiding in fear in your room thinking, please leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. I just want to be left alone. That fear, oh, that's just hazing. No, actually that fear, that little feeling of adrenaline and then you still had to come out eventually. You couldn't hide in your room forever. You got to come out eventually.
Yeah.
That really is what that stepping stones were to, where you getting where that fear was being addressed when you were about ready to go into because it sounds so romanticized when you say it. But you're going into a stressful environment where something bad might happen, where someone might die or but that little beginning stress, that's where it started to build up. And I have much respect, especially when I went in. I was very lucky that my first RIP, and I'm proud to say this, my first RIP cadre, one of the cadre members was Sergeant Jeff Strucker. How lucky was I to have Sergeant Strucker from Somalia when I was a private? And I didn't really know. I didn't know the story of Black Hawk Down a lot at that point in time. I didn't. But to have a guy like that, and we got hammered. I got RIP was a bitch. We got crushed, but it was but it was so necessary to have somebody like that that had that experience, which at that time really there wasn't a ton of Rangers that had combat experience when I went through in 95. Right. So I admire you guys because I bet every damn RIP cadre, RASP cadre you have, every damn 75th cadre there that's at the training facility has got stereo scrolls and has probably been through it. And so you guys are getting prepped right off the bat, brother. So, it translates well.
Most of my cadre, I think they'd probably have 4 or 5, 6 deployments under their belts by the time they're at, RASP cadre. But yeah, that wealth of experience, that's something they pass on. And to your point, I mean, it's that problem solving is what it is really what it is in stressful situations.
Under duress, you got to be able to still tie that knot under duress. You can't tie that knot under duress. But that's the beauty of it, and that's the beauty of being at Ranger Battalion. And I know the other units, the other SOCOM units, do similar things as well.
Sure.
So no, it's well said, brother. Well said.
Yeah, and you know what I was wondering? I think I've gotten it into this with you, previously, but for this audience in particular, they might want to hear about your background of growing up in Thailand and Pakistan. It's unlikely someone's going to say, I have a dream of becoming an Army Ranger. Where did that come about?
So I grew up in northern Pakistan, probably the majority of my childhood. I lived in Pakistan for about 9 to 10 years. It's about 10 years with a couple 6-month breaks in there. And then I lived in Thailand after that for about 5 years, and my parents still live in Thailand. So my parents have been there since 2002, I guess. Yeah, 2002, 2003 era. So yeah, I went to an international school, finished, it was basically an American school in Thailand, finished in Thailand. Was homeschooled / went to a British boarding school for a bit in Pakistan. But yeah, I mean, it was... I had a lot of that had a big impact on me in joining Ranger Battalion. I'd say some of the direct, I guess, inspirations or reasons for joining battalion, but the biggest one is just because I was a young dude that wanted to do cool stuff. I mean, that that does pretty much the universal
that's how we
reason.
all are, brother.
Yeah, but I mean, I like, for example, growing up in northern Pakistan, you know, in the 90s, we moved there in 93. I knew who the Taliban were, you know, all growing up, you know, and all throughout the 90s. I knew that they were really bad dudes. I very obviously, living there, you know, it's not like you have this broad generalization of all the people there. You know, they're totally separate from, you know, all the people that I lived around and that I was with. In fact, back then in the 90s, all the Taliban were over the border in Afghanistan. So it's like we would have less direct contact with them and more direct contact with a lot of refugees coming over, a lot of local Afghans that were, for whatever reason, on the run. And just meeting a couple of those people and really getting to know their stories, you know, people that would refuse to fight for the Taliban and then get thrown out in the desert to die and then walk over the border and somehow make it and, you know, come across us and we'd help them get to Canada or Norway. Well, not me, I was a kid, my parents, you know, and like just hearing their stories and these really awesome, just amazing people, you know, incredible people under the threat of death, you know, refusing the Taliban what they want, and you know, basically a lot of them did get killed. So you know, I knew who they were, and then after 9/11, it got really dangerous in Pakistan. You know, the Taliban started to flood over the border. Obviously, was a huge one. Things got really complicated. A lot of things over my head as a kid. And then in 8th grade, I was going to a British boarding school, which isn't the stereotype of what you think it is just a normal school where they, you know, run by British people. We didn't like wear plaid, like, I don't know, little suits or whatever.
Yeah, that is what I'm
They call the caps with the little short bills.
Right. I wish. In retrospect, that would have been super cool, but no. But terrorists attacked the school when I was a kid. That was my first sort of introduction into the world of combat. So it was a school shooting overseas. And none of the students were killed by a series of miracles, but, you know, some of the staff were killed. And, you know, I don't think that affected a lot. I mean, it definitely had a lot of influence in just joining battalion, I think. But the biggest one was the fact that I knew that I wouldn't freak out if something like that happened. I think that was really a bigger influence. I didn't see them as like, oh, I'm going to, you know, take revenge on these people or something like that. But so, you know, and then so we left after that. It was too dangerous. Basically, I mean, we had gone through a lot of stuff there, a lot of various dangers, a lot of fighting between Sunni and Shiites, a huge, like, basically nuclear Cold War between India and Pakistan. And my family's policy was that we would stay there because they're aid workers. They're there to help people. You know, these were people that were, so many of them are just amazing, awesome people in northern Pakistan. And like, you know, we loved them. We wanted to be with them and we wanted to help them, you know, just with medical stuff. And my dad is an eye doctor. And so he had an eye clinic, and people go blind from cataracts there. You know, it's a very simple operation. Would take them 30 minutes. And then, you know, take the eye patch off the next day, person can see. You know, they haven't seen their grandkids, you know, or something ever, you know, and so really cool stuff. Our family's policy, my parents' policy, was that we would suffer the fate of the people there if it was something that everyone is suffering, but we would leave if we were targeted as Westerners. So when that did happen, you know, most of the people there, the vast majority of the people there were not targeting us, but, you know, it only takes one person, especially if you're, you know, I was a kid, my brother was a kid, and my parents, you know, they're not like there to, you know, start a war with anyone. They're just trying to help. So it just got too much. And after the attack on the school, that was it. So we left, and the whole school kind of went to Thailand. And it's a long story, but it was a segue into my dad doing aid work next door in Burma, and Thailand being a very awesome, relaxed, peaceful place to live compared to, you know, especially compared to Pakistan post 9/11. And it was, that was borderline just going to school in America, I mean, it was pretty similar to that. So, but while we were there, we became family friends with Dave Eubanks. I don't know if you know that name. He's a former 275 officer, and then he was in SF for a while. He runs Free Burma Rangers, which is a aid organization that also works in Burma, and kind of became family friends with him. And then there was a couple other 275 Rangers that we met. One guy, Johnny Galeska, and he was a team leader in 275 back in the 90s. And I mean, so I had these influences now in high school, and I was already kind of leaning in those directions, and then I meet these former Rangers, and at that point it was just a matter of time, really. So.
They're great. I know the names. Dave and I have never met, so but I've know the name, and we may have even met in passing, and I just
sure.
can't remember. I'm
yeah.
But no, I've never heard anything negative about him at all from anyone, and so that was tremendous. It's amazing how pathways work, brother.
Yeah,
how you ended up going to Ranger Battalion, being in Burma and Thailand. But the Burma Free, those guys, and I've never had the blessing or the opportunity to work with them, but I hear they're just animals, man. I mean, as far as that means, just hard as nails.
Right.
Just some of the toughest guys out there. So I would have liked to back in the day. I'm too old now. I don't like pain now. I'm good. I'll take everybody's word for it.
Yeah.
But that's amazing, dude. That is so amazing. And then now, did you pick two?
I know what you're going to ask, and I have an answer for you.
Yeah, you're
so,
375, right? With Tom, with Block, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So
and go ahead.
So what you're gonna ask? So I know all these 275 guys. I also had a lot of family, or not family, but personal sort of connections up in the Northwest, and so the RASP cadre, after RASP finished, they were like, I was in the 6th RASP class, so it was still kind of a new thing, and he was like, the NCOIC was like, all right, pick which battalion you want to go to. Everybody pick your battalion. This is a new RASP thing you didn't get to used to. It used to be by assignment, and now you get to pick. And so pretty much everybody went in I'd say about 70% of the people went in the 175 line, which for those of you who don't know is Savannah, Georgia, just awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
who doesn't want to go be on the beach?
Right.
The stereotype again with 175. If you're going down there, you're going to marry a swimsuit model. That's a stereotype. I don't know. I never. Go ahead. That's awesome.
Yeah. So and then there was probably about 4 or 5 of us that got in the 275 line, and then one guy got in the 375 line because his family's like from there.
And 275 is where?
That's in Fort Lewis,
right next to Seattle, or near Seattle. So. Beautiful mountain stuff. And then there's Columbus, Georgia, which is 375. And then the dude was just like, fuck you guys, you're all going to 375. Nothing's changed. So he let us get all in line and then broke our little hearts. So we all went up in 375, but it's like anything else, once you get there and you meet all the people, you can't even imagine going anywhere else. It's like, so blessed to have known those people and deployed with those guys and trained with those guys and all that stuff.
No, we razz each other. The battalions razz each other, but every guy that's gone to that respective battalion, we all are dedicated to it. So so if I went to 375, I'd be giving crap to 275 right now. So it's in Columbus. It's nobody wants us because you've been there since basic training. I think that's why a lot of guys don't want to stay there because I've been here for what now? It's basic airborne school. Hopefully I didn't recycle. Now I've got RASP, and instead of that being 3 weeks, now it's 8 weeks. So now you've been there for close to 5 months. Everybody wants to leave Benning. Nobody wants to stay in Benning.
The first time I left Benning was after I joined the Army, was my first deployment, and then coming back from that was, well, I guess leave doesn't really count, but yeah, I mean, as far as actually doing stuff in the Army, the first time I left Benning was my first deployment, and then coming back, and then Dahlonega Ranger School, because the first phase of Ranger School is even,
is that Benning?
So it's
you gotta go
come on, man, like, get me out of here.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt our own conversation here. We're putting this in post here, but this episode is sponsored by Thadia. If you haven't yet worn or heard of the apparel brand Thadia, then you need to experience the brand. Thadia is the first apparel brand to literally mean courageous and brave. It's what we seek from ourselves, from the heroic individuals who protect us to the athlete and to the everyday individual. Thadia represents the courage and bravery within us all. Thadia has taken its profound meaning and combined it with enhanced tech apparel to give individuals the unique apparel brand that reflects their own courage and bravery. No longer are the words courage and bravery only used to describe the actions of individuals. Now these words are ingrained within the apparel you wear. Check out Thadia online at Thadia.com. Once again, THADDEA.com, and experience the brand of the courageous and brave, and the KTP apparel line, of course, the apparel line dedicated in the name of this guy, former U.S. Army Ranger and 2012 Benghazi survivor Chris Peranto. And before I finish this read, I also wanted to say that when I gave Thadia the list of like who is coming on, they were like, get us on the episode with Luke Ryan. So they were psyched to have you on for this one, man.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, so I know you are constantly wearing their stuff, Chris, to the gym, everywhere else. And how long has it been since you've really hooked up with Scott?
2.5 years in Knoxville, Tennessee. I actually did a photo shoot, and then I did another one for him in Nashville. And actually, we found out that doing the professional photos now with the days and age of these phones coming out, it's almost better for me just to do photos just in my basement, in my little gym down there, or when I'm at the gym. So no, but we've been with 2 years, and my wife is one of their brand ambassadors. She doesn't want to be called them because I don't see her as a model either. She didn't want to be like a model, a fitness model.
Yeah, she said that on the last show. She was like, please not.
Yeah, and she doesn't believe me. She doesn't have. It is.
Are you saying your wife doesn't look like a model?
No, she does.
She's gonna kick your ass.
And I don't want to offend all the fitness models out there, but she doesn't have that influencer. Yeah, I love that word now that we use that influencer mentality. You know, she
definitely not.
Tanya's just Tanya. No, she's an athlete. She was. I said we've said it before. She's an All-American volleyball player. She's still a tremendous athlete, and she just happens to look good. so and she looks good in their clothes, and I know Thadia's always made good stuff, and it's that good form fitting material, good form fitting, but it's not compression.
Yes,
not that compression stuff. Which you know what, for certain things, like when I used to play football, sure, I want compression stuff under my football pads, but to go to the gym in that compression stuff, carrying that gallon jug with my pre-workout, I don't do that. I'm making fun a little bit. I'm poking fun a little bit, you guys out there. But yeah, that's not my thing. But having something form-fitting that's comfortable, and you don't get that nipple rub, you guys know what I'm talking about. That old shape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And again, Scott over there is Scott Talent is his name. He's just a tremendous human being. And Ian and I have said it before. We like products, but we also look at the ethics, and I look at the ethics of people that I represent, that I'm blessed enough to be asked to represent. And Scott's ethics are second to none. Just like Fort Scott, just like Ned, who we got on, just like when we had Everyday Grind Coffee.
Yeah, and they may be doing a show soon, another show. I've been in touch. But yeah, no, they're great. Once again, as I said on the episode with Tanya, I would say go true to size on most stuff for men.
Yeah.
Apparel brands should be more than just performance-based, and fortunately now it can be said, mission accomplished. Thadia, inspired by the heroic and worn by the courageous and brave. Follow Thadia on Instagram, once again, THADDEA, Twitter or Facebook, and visit them online at Thadia.com. Also, Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as directly online through fortscottmunitions.com. Use exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. With that, let's get right back to this episode with Luke Ryan in studio.
I know it's a PC world now, but gosh, go back to the day and I remember Victory Drive when it was actually Victory Drive, man. when it had the debauchery all down it, but I was still shocked to see that hotel in that corner that's up by Ranger Joe's. That was still there. I can't. It's that right where U.S. Cav used to be. I know it's something else now. It's not U.S. Cav. It's Commandos. And there's a seedy hotel, Ian, that you just don't go. I mean, you walk in, you're going to catch VD walking in the door. You just stay out of that thing.
Don't even look at it.
But that's the arm. But now Victory Drive is cleaned up quite a bit, but it is. It's. I still love going back to Benning, dude, because every time that feels like a second home. Even because you're always going back there for something. If you're with the 75th, always doing something. So no, bro. Great story, dude. And I know if Ian's got something for you. If not, I kind of wanted to hear. And Ian, I'll give you a second here, but I wrote about Tom Block in Patriots Creed, and I know you're actually on that op, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know how much you can talk about it. Tom to me is just a freaking warrior. That dude, but if we got a second, maybe 5 minutes, just however long, I'd like to kind of know even more. I know a little bit of what Tom did, but the op itself, because you only have so many pages. What can you tell me a little bit about that? That's not classified that you can get into, because I would like to know a little bit more about it. Because to me, that was just an amazing heroism from you, not just Tom, but from many of you on that day and night, man. I'd just like to hear about it, man.
Sure, yeah, I'll I can go over it briefly. It was pretty much just like a standard mission to start out with. It was one of those missions where it was you think there's nothing really is going to go down, and that's the one where everything goes down. But we hit the ground. We landed right on top of them, and I was on basically anybody who would take off running. Me and my team were designated to go chase them down. Tom Block and his team were gonna. We had like half of our platoon. We weren't short. The other half of the platoon went to another objective. So, which thank God, because it would have been a lot worse with a lot more people. But yeah, man, we landed on the ground and a guy took off, he took off running, which isn't totally, like unusual when you land a helicopter right on top of somebody, pretty much that they're scared and they run away. So, it's not necessarily like, oh, it's on, I ran across this field to chase this dude down, and my guys came with me along with Dog Handler and EOD, and some leadership trailing behind us. And we chased him down, and he sort of kind of goaded us into a smaller ambush in a valley, which I won't get into super a lot, but basically the handler made a life-saving, one of many life-saving decisions that night. He made a decision to let the dog go off leash, and at the very last second, and the dog, whose name was Yanni, was killed. And I owe my life, and the other dude on my team also. We owe our lives to that handler and his decision, and that dog. So back at the compound, basically there was just a lot of explosions going off. So we, busted ass to get back there, and what had happened was that there was essentially a minefield, I guess you could call it. It was a bunch of pressure plates under the surface, but they weren't plugged in when I ran across it all. They were all like, it was all disarmed. So when they surrounded the compound, got plugged in. So then it'd sort of be like if you teleported into the middle of a minefield. And a lot of things are going on. It was very confusing, and it's kind of harder to explain, and my timeline is a little bit disjointed. And probably if you ask the same story from 10 other guys, you get 10 different stories. But basically which, how it goes. But basically I mean, you got guys like, like Brian Anderson, who got the Distinguished Service Cross. He was the medic. He was just going from guy to guy, doing what he could, risking his life. I mean, EOD is just, clearing from guy to guy, trying to get everyone, just get everyone safe so that everyone has clear paths out of there. So basically, we were, the enemy was taken care of, but we were still like in this huge imminent danger. Tom was hurt real bad. We had no idea who was like. It was to the point where we didn't really know who was like alive or dead, and there was a lot of. I think I don't know what the final official tally was for explosion count, somewhere around 12, 13. And so we basically carried the wounded out first, and whoever we could save, we saved. And really, I just did what you're supposed to do. A lot of guys went above and beyond. Like you got guys like, they, like I said, EOD, medic, all, dog handler, all these guys making these very decisive, heroic decisions. Their heroism being in their bravery, but also in their decisiveness and their ability to be effective, and also doing that under such duress, and then going above and beyond, and really like saving a lot of people's lives, and there were we had 4 killed in action, and the wounded count is probably just depends on whether you go by friendlies or Americans, because we had some Afghan guys with us, but wounded was around 30. You guys. You don't have to relive it all, brother. It's. I get it. I know how hard it is to do that. I just because I don't realize a lot of those stories out there. You see stuff where there's somebody sees like it's 13 hours. Yeah, people get to see that, but they don't get to see other heroic actions. And I do believe that you're a hero, and you don't, and I get it. You don't have to agree or disagree with me. Just shut your mouth. Shut your mouth, Ranger. All right. But also, Tom and there's that kind of stuff within Regiment, the stories that went on. Regiment was extremely, extremely effective. But there's a lot of that went on, but you still completed the mission. That was the fantastic thing about it. And you still got everybody out. No one was left behind. You still upheld the Ranger Creed, and we're like, oh well, don't get into that that cliche stuff. Well, no, I'm going to, because that's important, and that's why everybody continues. That's why you guys did what you did. You did well, and you were caught in a really bad situation. I can't even imagine. That with being in a minefield, running into it, then having and that's literally how. I don't think people realize how the enemy can. The enemy has some effective tools as well in doing that. Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
That's simple. That's simple what they did. But I admire you, brother. I want to say, and that's why I wanted to say, not just to hear your story, but just so I could say thank you, because I think you and your team did amazing from what I knew. I appreciate that. And just going across some of those names, man. I mean, like guys like Josh Hargis, who's the dog handler, or Tom Block. Both wounded pretty seriously, but I mean, those dudes. I mean, they're just like. You go to a battalion, and you know what I'm talking about. You go to the battalion, and there are people who are just like, I made it through Ranger School, and I'm like getting to these leadership positions, at least junior leadership positions, and I'm feeling like, okay, I'm still trying to like keep up. I'm still trying to like tread water and just stay like, don't fire me, please. Like, that's, I mean, in my outwardly, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Like, we're going to do this, and this, and like whatever. But inwardly, I'm like, oh my God, dude, like these guys that I'm next to, these guys are animals. These guys are monsters, and they're smart. They're smarter than me. They're stronger than me, and they're just awesome. They're like, and Tom, Josh, like these guys, they're like the epitome of that. I mean, these guys are like, I mean, they just Brian Anderson, just such an awesome medic. And like, of course, you like them personally, but just, I mean, everything tactically, like skill wise. I mean, it's a practical job. So whether people like you or not is directly tied to how good you are at what you do.
From an outsider's perspective, it seems like, and just meeting all of you guys, first time meeting you in person, but sure. I've met, all the guys that we've worked with over the years. I feel like everybody goes through that. Reading Jack's book where he, I think, bravely talked about that friendly fire incident. He felt like pretty early on, I'm going to be out of here. Our friend James Powell, when he talks about being recruited by the CIA and being in a room and feeling like I'm not as good as these guys. I don't deserve to be here. I was just a Marine. I'm in a room with special ops guys. I'm in a room with Harvard grads. And that great story of that woman at the CIA grabbing him and saying like, hey, look like you belong here. There's a reason that they picked you. So I think everybody has that indecisive feeling, but you're obviously a badass, man. There's a reason why you went through what you went through. But I think everybody, I mean, you probably included, Chris, goes through those moments where you're like, I'm not on the level of these guys next to me.
I think it's maintaining some humility and outside I would say most Rangers that I've met and that I've worked with, not all of them. There's some arrogant bastards too, and I've been arrogant at times too. Believe me. But most of them, and what it is, Luke. You're humble, dude. And regiment. We make fun of each other. You've got Matt doing his thing with which is basically doing the stuff the when he broke out, and it's the stuff we used to do at Battalion when we used to make fun of people. The skits. That's what. But a lot of that was behind closed doors, and it was a lot of it was so people see those arrogant SOB. No, not really. We were just having fun trying to kill time, but the majority of time it was man, I got to get up this morning and prove myself again. Oh, shoot, it was. I hope I don't get fired today. Oh my gosh, we're going on a 5-mile run. You do 8 million of them, but you're like, gosh, man, I hope who's going to beat me today, or I got to push it today. And it was going to the range, man. I better shoot whatever I ought to shoot today, because I know the guy that's behind me, he's going to be shooting while I can't falter. It's just, and that's why it's stressful every day being at Battalion, because every morning you have to wake up. You really do feel like you have to prove yourself every day. So what did I do yesterday? Who gives a shit what you did yesterday?
Right.
What are you going to do today?
Yeah.
But that's what made 75th. That's what makes Ranger Battalion what it is, man. That's why you have guys like yourself and Tom, and you have guys like I got Sergeant, his name Sergeant Matty Waters, who lost his leg to an RPG attack. Petrie, who went through basic training with me. I was with Leroy. Leroy went through basic. You get guys like that, And Leroy, believe me, Leroy was pushing himself every day, because Leroy, whatever skills he did lack, he made up for it with tenacity.
Sure.
But that's every day. You're competing against guys that any one of those guys could be a Medal of Honor winner on any certain day, because that's how much they want to beat, and that's how much they want to push themselves. And you're selling yourself short. I know you're a little ginger guy, but come on, I'm a 5'9", 160-pound Mexican guy, but I know we could still carry our weight if we needed to. But you're right. Every day it was, shit, man. Okay, I got to go back and prove myself again today.
Yeah,
but that's what made it so special there.
Well, it doesn't have to. I think like just going on into life, it doesn't have to be this like, a fear driving it, but I think it's important to surround yourself with people that you consider to be better than yourself in some way or in another way. Because, you be around people that push you. You might push them in certain ways, but, I've tried to, not always successfully, but tried to seek out places, and I feel like I'm there now. At Black Rifle, I try to seek out places where in my field I'm around people who are better than me at what I do. And at least obviously, if somebody's working for you, that's not the case. But, the people who are above you, certainly, and the people who are like your peers, just the whole culture of like trying to get better, trying to do better at your job, trying to be better as a person in general, and surrounding myself with people who are better than me is a way that I've found that when I do that, it improves myself like a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask, how did the Black Rifle Coffee connection happen with Coffee or Die?
I was looking for a place to write, and I started just hitting up people who were publishing, and then I eventually got across Marty's desk and started writing for Coffee or Die. And then I have worked as a copy editor before, so I started doing some freelance copy editing with them and just sort of taking on more responsibilities as time went on. I started like doing a lot with their social channel, especially Instagram. And then after a while, Black Rifle, big Black Rifle was looking for a social media manager, and I kind of fit the bill and got hired and been working there.
That's so cool, man, because Marty really is such a solid guy, and I could tell you this from the last time I saw Marty. I've hung out with Marty a bunch of times, but the very last time I saw him was when his dad was dying. He knew his dad was going to pass away from it's ALS was what he died of, right? I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but so Marty, with his dad, Marty Sr., he had basically a bucket list of things he wanted to do. And one of those things was, I think, visit the Netherlands. And one of them was visit New York City. And he came to New York City. I got to show them around.
Sweet.
And, I mean, his dad had such a great attitude about things, considering all that he was going through, having trouble communicating. And I just thought it was so stand-up of Marty to say, I'm going to put my life on hold, and I'm going to do every single one of these things on my dad's bucket list. I'm putting work aside, and I'm going to travel to wherever my dad wants to travel. And that's the type of guy Marty is.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've been working. So I never actually crossed paths with Marty before.
That's so crazy
before
to me. But
Coffee
you've
or
hung out
Die.
with him now, right?
No.
This is
a lot
that's
of the
internet,
phone.
man. It's so crazy because, like, technically, Chris is in Nebraska, as you guys know, but at least I've hung out with Chris a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. Oh man, I've worked remote for so long, that there's so many people that I should have met that I haven't met in person, but that I've talked to for countless hours over the phone or Skype or whatever.
And you do feel like you know them. Like when you walked in the studio,
for sure.
I felt like you were not a new person.
Yeah,
I've talked to Luke countless times.
No, for sure. Yep. Yeah, it's just the way of the world, man. And I live in upstate New York, and not many people live in upstate New York. So
we always talk about New York on this podcast, and I think people forget that New York is not New York City. There are parts of New York where people still love to go shooting. They love their guns, and they are not, eating like here avocado toast for $20. Like it's a totally different atmosphere. Even where I am on Long Island, when I come into the city, it's a different vibe. People on Long Island generally a little bit more friendly, a little bit more it feels like home to me because it is home. There's spots where you can see great points of nature, and you're not in this rat race that is New York City, but this is just the media capital of the world. If you want to do something in the field that we do, a lot of times you have to be here, and it is it's like a necessary evil.
Yeah, unless you have a great producer like Ian who shoots there, then you can live in the Midwest and still be remote. So you guys keep talking about being. I'm going to still stay remote over here and be in Nebraska, New York. Go ahead. Go
well, when you even told me, Luke, that you were like, I'm driving in, I was like, ooh, that's going to be tough, man, because driving to the city, it is the worst.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I figured that out.
Do you like being in upstate New York currently?
Yeah. I like it now. I'm actually going to move though to Texas pretty soon.
That's going to be
on
awesome.
Location at Black Rifle, so I'm excited about that.
I thought Black Rifle was based out of Utah, or do they have several places?
One major location in Salt Lake City and one in San Antonio.
Got it.
So,
okay.
And they have a lot of physical locations here and there, but those are the two main sort of places. And yeah, I'm super excited to go down there. I've been kind of nomadic since I got out of the Army. I've only lived in New York for like a year and a half. I was in Florida before that, and then California before that. So since I've been out, I've been doing a lot of moving around. But I'm excited to go down to Texas. I'm excited for.
Is that San Antonio or Austin?
Yep, San Antonio.
Dude, you're gonna love San Antonio. Is awesome.
Yeah.
It's beautiful down there, and you don't still run. I think I'm one of the few rangers that actually still runs a lot.
I run a lot. Yeah, running. I'm a big runner.
You're good. Then you got to at least do. You got the river. I know it's something that's that everybody does, but it is worth it going and running the entire river walk, and you can go miles. It's especially at night, dude. Just go to. I mean, you're gonna have to weave around people. But it's worth it. Just like going when you go to New York, I had to run Grand Central.
Yeah.
I had to run Central Park once. I had to run the Chelsea Pier. You have to do those things. Those are like bucket lists for runners. And the Riverwalk is definitely a bucket list, dude. Go do it. Go do it at least once during the day when nobody's on it, and then once at night it's like an obstacle course, but the lights are everywhere. It's pretty.
No, I'm all about it, man. I mean, I lived in Chiang Mai, Thailand for 5 years, and that's tourist central. I have no reservations about doing. So many people just want to stay off the beaten path, and like I really enjoy doing that, but I also know that most of the quote unquote off the beaten path places that you go to if you're just visiting a place are actually just alternative tourist destinations.
Tourist,
I have no reservations about going to, if something's cool, like I'll go see it. I like going there. I don't know. I figured you are a tourist unless you actually like live there for a long time. So, I'm happy to go there, see all the cool stuff. My girlfriend and I already went to the Riverwalk visiting down there pretty recently. So it's pretty cool, pretty legit.
Beautiful, dude. Yeah, I love running San Antonio everywhere. I'll run everywhere up there, and just it's the best way to see places to me, especially if running is a religion, man. It's the best way to experience any place. I love the road. I've never been to Thailand. One place I've ever been. Wouldn't mind going there, and you just have to tell me where I can and can't run, because sometimes I'm not real smart. I ran in Baltimore once, and there was in areas I probably shouldn't have been running. I didn't know. I was ignorant, so I always have to ask. Now, should I go in this area, or am I okay? So, but no, bro, that's amazing. I envy your time in Thailand. I would have loved to see that, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so you know what I was going to say when you talked about all of these places that you've moved to? This seems like, and I could be wrong in this because I don't know every single aspect of when you've moved. Is this the first time you're moving for an actual opportunity, like on paper, I have a job doing this? Because I think that takes some guts to just move somewhere and be like, I don't know what the plan is, but I want to live here. Oh, yeah.
When I got out of the Army, I moved to San Francisco. I lived there for a bit less than not very long, a bit less than a year. I loved it there. Really expensive, but awesome place. But then for a bunch of reasons, we decided to leave, me and my roommate, who was a Seco guy, 375. And we were like, okay, we're going to leave. And his girlfriend at the time, now wife, we were just like, well, where do you want to go? We asked her, and, we just go anywhere, And she was like, well, I have a grandma who lives an hour away from Tampa. So we're like, oh, cool, let's go to Tampa. So we literally, it was a long drive from San Francisco to Tampa. It's about as long as you can get, east-west. Yeah. And, so we did. We put threw everything in a big 14-foot U-Haul, and we drove over. I was going to school online for a bit, for a semester, and did some construction work, and then went over and did some aid work with my dad in Burma.
And by the way, was it weird doing construction work? Because I feel like your passion is a writer, and you're a great writer. Was it weird to have to put that aside and do manual labor?
Yeah, I mean, so I was also going to school online. I obviously don't have any reservations about doing physical labor for work because, battalion is that. But,
sure.
But it did sometimes feel like you go from this grand, job that's literally on a global scale to working construction. We were actually not even construction. We were ripping out black mold from infested places. So it was you get in all this protective gear, and you go in there and rip it down. And me and my buddy were doing it together, and he probably handled it a bit better than I did. In general, I didn't like it, but I mean, man, that's the type of stuff that's good for you. I mean, it's good to it's not something I would want to spend my life doing because I want to write, not because it's it's a totally honorable and awesome thing. And there's a lot of guys who really they've got a lot an awesome career in construction. Sure. But it's hard to do something that you don't want to do. So
I would assume it makes you appreciate it more, because I've been there before too. And you get to say, I'm a full-time writer, writing about subjects that you're passionate about. I mean, we had, Coriolanus, right? I'm not going to say his real name, but he's written for. Yeah. So what he was saying that I thought was interesting was, on the episode he was talking to someone from Germany, and she was like, your media is so ridiculous. Everything is all Trump all the time. And I feel like if you want to work in media, there has to be a Trump connection to everything. And luckily, you get to do what you want to do. You get to be a journalist and write about all these international affairs that are important to you. And the media revolves around one man. And it's nice to show people there's other things going on in the world that you should be informed about.
The cool thing about being a writer is that, like everyone else, you're not really special. I mean, you are special in that everyone's special, but if something interests you, there is a market for it because there are more people like you out there. So if you're the type of guy who wants this non-mainstream media, recycling the same headlines over and over, just some tweaking of words difference, and that's it. If you want something that you would passionately read about, if you write about it, somebody else will read it. So it's still a craft. It's still a business. You still have to like you have to be good at it, and you have to be willing to take criticism, which can be difficult especially with anything that encroaches on the realm of art. And but you really, there is a market for it. It's tapping into that market, or showing people out there that you have this piece that that for them to read, that can be difficult. But if you can get through all that, it's pretty cool, because people will read it and they like it. There's a demand for it, because like you're just kind of talking about, people can get tired of the same thing. Well, even if you agree or disagree with what's being recycled out there, there are other facets to life than the main headlines recycled over and over. I mean, life is such a full experience, and to focus on one part of it is to really limit yourself. I mean, that's with my poetry. I've tried to explore, it's war poetry, but I've tried to explore all of these facets and corners of war. My experiences with violence and war are fairly limited. I mean, I've got, several years in the military, and now and some experiences as a kid. I'm not one of those guys that went on 12 deployments, to Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and all this stuff. But even with 4 or 5 years, you can sit down and explore. Like, I mean, I could probably write a whole book of poetry about road tripping. I mean, any life experience, there are these incredible facets to, and just to unpack them and explore them, especially for anything traumatic, is very cathartic. But also, just to help yourself understand it, it's kind of a form of therapy. But it's also like, it's cool, it's profound, to unpack and explore all of these corners of life. And I try to do that with my poetry and my articles, is just to unpack the unexplored corners of whatever's out there that people haven't talked about before.
And it is important for guys like yourself to get out there, journalists, ones that like to write, because of that recycling that's going on right now. I would honestly, I would be on the other end of the spectrum. Instead of writing something, I would rather go out I would rather go do manual labor. But that being said, it is. I from the outside perspective, this is from a non-writer, and maybe I've got a podcast, but I'm not media, nothing like that. Just
sure you are.
This
is where we
dead.
are.
But to me, real journalism, the investigative, it's done. It's dead, because people are just pulling stuff. They're verifying it off the internet. They're verifying somebody else's work off the internet. It's nothing. To me, it's not. There isn't investigative journalism out there. It's all partisan. It's all politicized, and it's hard for me to even. That's why I don't even read. I don't even read any of the papers anymore. I don't watch Fox News or CNN anymore. I used to watch both. I don't even do that anymore. It's so. From the normal me, a normal person, I'm so tired of it. It's so awful.
Though,
looking at it.
Just like in business, so if in business you identify a need and you fulfill that need with your business. People need soap, so you make soap because they need it, and then they can clean themselves. It's the same with guys, more. Yeah, right. Most guys. It's the same with moral or ethical dilemmas, I think, in like any society. And we're talking about American society. If there is a need, it's not necessarily it is a need, and it can be. That need can signify the death of something that was successful in the past, but it's also an opportunity for people to fill that gap. And it's an opportunity with the internet. We have this oversaturation of information. We have this oversaturation of everyone shouting at walls pretty much and at each other. But we also have this, we also have opportunities, and it really takes like a unique, you really have to be at the cutting edge of it. And, but you can use it to your advantage, and you can fulfill those needs. You can try to, how do I use this access to information around the world to promote, solid journalism to somehow, you know what I mean? To promote like stories, to get stories that people want to read out there, to really like do my due diligence and to attack these problems in a way that's, truthful and not driven by an agenda. Or if it is, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're if you're writing an opinionated novel, then obviously it's going to be opinionated. But doing it in a way that more speaks to the human experience than it does to just a superficial political agenda. But so I think there's a big opportunity like now and in the future because everything's in flux. I mean, what we're describing is just this huge chaotic explosion of the internet and of information, and nobody knows what to do with it, and nobody knows how to work it. And like you said, you're identifying all these issues, and like investigative journalism is now side by side and drowned out by 50 articles that are just like opinions written as fact. And it's so hard to tell truth from fact. We're so oversaturated with information.
It is. It's investigative pundits now is what I should call them. Investigative journalists.
Right.
But that's good to hear that, brother. And that's also why I wanted to write with. I'm gonna sure, Luke, because I know you're gonna put down whether you think I'm a shithead or not. You're gonna write it down. You're not, and that's what I admire, and that's what I'm glad you said that. I figured you'd answer that way, but I'm glad you did, man, and you answered it perfectly. And you're right. Makes me feel like we're in good hands because we have a new generation like yourself that are coming up and realize that there is a problem. Okay, there is a gap here where we need to fix it. And that's awesome. That's awesome to hear, brother. Yeah. Well done.
The unfortunate thing is, and I've heard people like Jack Murphy talk about this before and kind of be angered by it. We, the people, are kind of to blame for what's going on in journalism. If we didn't click on this stuff all the time, they wouldn't write it. But people do like shouting matches and split-screen debates and forming an opinion on an issue before they even know what the issue is. If we didn't watch it and we didn't click on it, it would go away. I have friends in journalism who I went to Hofstra University with who were doing great investigative work, and it turned out that no one was clicking on that stuff. They were clicking on, I have a friend who was doing investigative work on homicides and all different things happening. And it turned out that these local papers he was working for, the big story was where in Queens does Nicki Minaj buy her wig? Right. And he was just I can't make money off of this. And it's kind of frustrating because I think there's no reward for doing what you're doing. But I am glad to see that there's new venues like Coffee or Die for people who do want to read this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of trying to be adaptable. I mean, and it's a metaphorical knife fight out there. I mean, there's so many articles that I've written that have gone virtually unread. You know what I mean?
I heard Jack say, for example, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I'm just thinking of this. I remember Jack once sitting down and saying, I could write a great investigative piece on China. I could cite all the works of where I've read this stuff. And he's like, I know for a fact that if I write an article about a guy dressed up as an Army Ranger at the mall, that's going to get more clicks.
Right.
And he's and he was saying to the audience, don't tell me you guys don't want to read that stuff because I know that's what you guys click on.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's true. And I mean, so many issues in, the U.S. in the political sphere, the media sphere are our own fault, and how everyone else can do better is what people like to talk about. But how can I do better is what we should be asking ourselves. How can I navigate this world and at least contribute? I mean, just it's like voting. I mean, voting with your dollar, voting with your actual vote, whatever you're voting with your eyes, voting with your clicks. Being aware of the world you live in. And if you're going to try and navigate it, if you're going to be online and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be contributing to the problem. I mean, that's just how it is. But it's really it's just a new landscape. I mean, that personal responsibility has existed and been in both short supply and people have needed it for a long time. And the internet is just the latest area or arena where we're in dire need of people having a bit of personal responsibility. And because there's a lot of things, personal responsibility being but what does that exactly mean? It means, am I aware of forces that are trying to influence me in certain ways? Am I aware of confirmation bias? Am I aware of which stories are put out on what platforms and what those agendas might be of those platforms? Obviously, you can't just know, I mean, a lot of these things happen, out of the limelight, a lot of the decisions. So trying to make an informed decision can actually take a lot of work. And that's where the personal responsibility piece comes in, because, it's a lot of work. You got to learn this practical. It doesn't feel practical because it's the internet, but you got to learn this practical field that if you're on Facebook and you're clicking on all these news stories, you're playing on the field.
Yeah.
So, if you can either not learn how to navigate it and be totally duped by whoever's trying to, trick you or push you towards certain agendas, or you can really try to learn this kind of stuff and try to be, a proactive listener and a proactive reader, and you'll be a more effective member of American society.
You know what I wanted to ask you? I mean, if you turn on the news right now, everything going on is either Trump, the Democratic primary, coronavirus, which is getting more serious than I originally thought, to be honest. What is like the big story in the world you're investigating right now that is going completely unnoticed?
I don't know if I would call this a story that I could write a single thing about. Maybe you could talk to a bunch of psychologists or something. My biggest passion for sort of the state that the United States is in politically and in the media is that I believe that the mechanism of debate and argument itself is broken. So let's say you have the right answer of whatever issue we're talking about, right? And then you have these people that you obviously believe are in need of the right answer because they don't have it. So, our way of doing it now is like, I'm going to go over there and tell them the truth. And they'll either have open minds and open ears and listen to me, or they're not going to listen to me, right? But it's more like if you have a pickup truck full of food, bananas, and you have a bunch of starving people down the street or across a bridge or something, and your truck's broken. It doesn't matter how much food or how much truth you have. If your mechanism of delivery is broken, then you can't expect them to just start eating. So a lot of these debates are actually never leaving the station. They're never effectively communicating anything.
Yeah.
They're only feeding the people who are right there standing next to you, who already have, and that's giving it the grand assumption that what you have is true. This information you have is true. So I always thought it would be really interesting to explore that from a psychological standpoint. How, I guess I don't really know how that would operate so much. As far as like,
I just even meant beyond that. There's so much stuff happening in the world in war that is not even reported in the mainstream, and if it is, it's buried somewhere because we have to talk about Bernie Sanders and Trump right now.
Yeah. I'd have to think about that one.
I do like your mechanism in comparison, the analogies you're making, because to me, you're the people that are already want to hear what you have to say. People that, and we'll put it just easy, the people who already love Trump, they're standing right next to that banana truck. The people that already love Elizabeth Warren, they're already standing right next to that banana truck too. But you may have some information that needs to get down to other people, whether it's good or bad with either, and they're not hearing it. And sometimes they don't. I think some people are in another. You may have that truck that's working. They're going to run away from that truck because they don't want.
Right. Well, that's true. That's definitely true. Yeah. But
I like that. I'm stealing that, brother.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they blame the other people for not eating, picking up on the truth when, like, why would they listen to you when you're delivering it that way? You're delivering it with so much like hate or anger or something. Like, why would anyone listen to you?
I'll tell you something, and a part of this audience will probably be mad at me because this is, more conservative leaning audience, which I am myself, but I try to look at things objectively. The stuff that I've seen in the past week, so we had the Harvey Weinstein thing that happened.
Yeah.
And I've noticed on Twitter, people are posting like, this is Michelle Obama with Harvey Weinstein. Here's Barack Obama with Harvey Weinstein. And you know what it made me remember is, I got to tell you guys, I once board-opped Harvey Weinstein for a radio show. If I'm being completely honest, could not have been a nicer guy. Super humble, came in, did not have an entourage, just him, totally personable. So if you think, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama knew what was going on, the guy didn't run around with a shirt that said, like, I'm a sexual predator.
Right.
People didn't know. So, it's more of that whole, as you said, confirmation bias. Like, see, this is who they're hanging out with. Jeffrey Epstein, totally different story. But when I saw that, I was like, this is kind of creating a story out of nothing. And people love to have that gotcha moment and post it on Twitter and be like, see, this is who the Democrats pal around with. And I'm like, this is a little bit of a stretch, being I met the guy and they probably had the same experience I did.
Yeah. Well, one of the first rules that I go by when I'm just browsing, or I try to go by, and I fall in the same trap that everybody else does here and there, is like, I see this, I agree with it. My first reaction when I'm trying to train
gotta
myself
retweet
to
this.
do is like, who's telling me this?
Yeah.
I agree with it. Who's telling it to me, and why are they telling it to me, and what's their deal? I mean, like, we got to be more critical of the people who we agree with than anyone else, because they're on your team, and if they're telling like lies or these things that they're or like half truths, the people on your team, they're making all of you look bad. So like whoever's on your team, at the very least, if you have to align with a specific team, then, you know, if you see something and you agree with it, you know, like, oh wow, like I hate these people and this guy's now a public bad guy, like, oh, you know, if that's how you think, and all of a sudden you see them together, you're like, ha, you know, gotcha. It's like,
and they did the same thing with Trump, you know, because he was at some party with, you know, the video of him with Jeffrey Epstein, and my reaction was getting a picture or video with Trump. Trump is like, he's like a Paris Hilton almost, you know, like how many people have taken a picture with him?
Sure, yeah.
It doesn't mean that there's a tie there. It doesn't mean there's a connection there. Just dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm not saying this to take a side, but like Bill Clinton, on the other hand, who we knew flew on Lolita Express, that's something I want to investigate a little bit more than there's a video of them laughing about something. So, yeah, but what I was getting at originally is I just hate, and I guess I'm perpetuating it, but like this is the center
I know
of
what
the
you're talking
news.
about. Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're reporting on things going on in the Middle East, going on in Asia, that the mainstream America is not even aware of.
I mean, there are countries that are, you know, Burma being a good example, that are in a constantly tumultuous state. I mean, and there are so many countries out there that I don't know much about, and that I you know, I certainly don't write about them, obviously, but these countries like Burma that I do know a little bit about, you know, these there's so much stuff happening. I mean, it's these countries that are just as complicated as ours, and there's just as many, you know, like agendas going left and right, and at conflict with each other, and all of these people who are super hyper aware of every facet of the conflict that live there, and that are, you know, everything, all these things that are going on. And one goal that I have as a writer is to try to do my best to make that palatable because I understand and know that my audience is American. So my readers, most of them are American. So if I was writing to, for example, a Thai or a Burmese audience, I would be writing a lot of different stuff. But there's so many countries like that are really, you know, there's just an infinite amount of things going on there. And it's so easy for us, for a number of reasons, because so much of the media is physically based in the U.S., because of our geographic isolation as the U.S., because of just, you know, half the things that are made on the internet are made in the U.S. Like, all of these things kind of make us feel like shut in from the rest of the world, and not everything out there affects us directly. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of it. You know, there's a lot of human suffering that we should be aware of, regardless of whether we can do anything about it or not. We should certainly be aware of it as a first step to anything, you know, and we also have this sort of very separated mindset because of all that stuff, that sometimes I think lends itself to, I don't know if we really understand that a lot of other governments don't have the same freedoms that we have. So freedom of the press being a huge one, you know. So if a huge government exercises some huge conspiracy overseas, that's one thing. But you have these medium to small countries that they're not. I don't even know if I'd call it a conspiracy or anything. They can cover up giant atrocities, you know, mass murders, literal mass murders, just because, you know, you don't have freedom of the press. You don't have, you know, we've got our whole slew of problems, and they're very serious problems that need to be addressed. But the fastest way to lose something is to not even know that you had it. So, you know, I think it providing awareness of all of these other countries and shedding a light on it not only is good just to shed a light on human suffering around the globe to people who could potentially, you know, be swayed by it and do something about it at least a little bit. But it's also good for us to appreciate, I think, the things that we have and to not take it for granted so we don't lose it. Because
I agree. These nations, like what you're saying, state-run propaganda or state control of the media. Well, you know, I can see. Last year, if you had asked this, I could say yes. I am seeing it move that way, whether it be one or the other. I'm seeing the state-run propaganda start to take hold, where we were just getting fed BS, whether it was from Fox or was from CNN. It was an agenda that was put out there. But with, like I said, and Ian, I think that's one of the reasons why I said it with Ian to do the podcast. I saw this was the way to stop that with your like Coffee or Die. That sort of outlet, these podcasts, that sort of outlet. Pat Miletich is out there with the conspiracy. I love talking to Pat Miletich over there. But those are the sort of things that are now the checks and balances with those big media. So I don't feel that way anymore. Now I'm looking and go, no, I think we're good because of just what you said. Because you have people like that out there saying, all right, guys, all right. Sides, screw the sides. If you want to take a side, I don't take a side anymore. I used to. I don't, and I admit that. I think I made a mistake taking a side. I needed to have an open mind, have some common sense that I'd lost. But now people are starting to really get back. All right, you're right. Now we're doing our due diligence. Now people are waking up more. I believe so, and I see that in this because I get out there and I speak a lot. So I get to meet a lot of different groups, whether it be, and they're not politically driven groups. These are corporations. So you're seeing people that are from both sides of the aisle. And you're starting to see them really. They're everybody's opening their minds a little. It's going to be a little bit because you're right. We dug ourselves in that hole. Yeah, we're coming out of it. And now you're spot on. And it's good from what you just said to me. It gives me another feeling as well. Yeah, we're not going that direction. Last year though, I was like, gosh, dang, we're turning into Al Jazeera. There's going to be an Al Jazeera out there pretty soon. We better. But it's good to see that you're out there. Just doing your due diligence and to hell who it offends, putting the truth out there and just saying, this is what we need to talk about. And this is what's going on. Here are the facts behind it. And it's close enough to being a scientific journal, but just not as dry as reading a scientific journal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my goal with anything that I write, especially anything that's even semi-news related. I mean, obviously if I'm talking a story about myself or something that I have a direct opinion about that I'm saying, hey, this is my opinion, which I don't even write those anymore. Not because I don't care about those things, but because I don't think it's effective and when everyone else is shouting their opinion. But anyway, when I write these articles, I feel that one of my goals is that the reader doesn't understand or couldn't tell you straight off the bat what I think, what my agenda is or what my goals are. They couldn't really tell you. I really rely heavily on quotes, and then I go back and with people and try to construct a cohesive narrative from people's quotes. That way I'm just a platform for people to tell their own stories, because that's really what I'm doing as a writer and as a journalist. You're telling other people's stories. So if I'm telling these other people's stories, I don't want the reader to be like, oh, this guy is obviously aligned this way or aligned that way, or he's an obvious centrist or he's an obvious Democrat or Republican, or that's if it's a political thing, or if it's a non-political issue, this guy has opinions about literally anything. I mean, even like veteran suicide is something I'm super passionate about, and I've written a bunch of articles on it, but I don't, there is a time and a place for me to project my opinions about what should be done, who isn't doing enough. Certainly, and how they could do better. But if that's the intent of my article, that needs to be clear. And if it's not the intent of my article, if the intent of my article is to provide awareness that this is a problem in the first place, because a lot of people just don't know that, people need to be reading and think that I am an unbiased sort of voice. And when they don't think that when they're reading it, they just don't think anything, which is the goal as a author telling someone else's story. They should be thinking about the story that you're writing. There's so many articles out there that are just some form of opinion that
it's hard to get by that. You're right, because when you're reading an opinion, when you're reading an article now, first thing on my mind, if I'm reading it, is what's the angle here? Is there an angle they're trying to get after? That shouldn't be it. It should be what's the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough now. We've conditioned ourselves, and you go back to agree with what both you said at the beginning. We made ourselves this way. Yeah, we have to fight ourselves. Now we have to fight our way out of it, which we can. But we have to fight our way out of it with like what you're doing.
Kind of pulling all this stuff together, like the Ranger mentality, the politics and the media and journalism and all this stuff. What it takes is, I think, is a sense of optimism. I mean, you can't win a firefight if you don't think that you can. I mean, and you know what I mean? You're not going to shoot if you have to have some level of optimism. And people look at optimism and they roll their eyes and they think it's stupid or childish or naive, but it's not. I mean, no. Giving up, and sort of just sitting. I mean, you have to be realistic. You have to understand what the realistic parameters of the situation, are, but you can't always see the way out. So in order to find the way out, you might have to cling on to some optimistic hope that there is a way out. And as you navigate your way through, and then what that optimism does is it drives you to seek out solutions to the problem, as opposed to just constantly, like a lot of pessimistic mindsets are constantly defining the problem over and over and over again. But you have to have at least a little, molecule of optimism to say, hey, we need to get out of here. This problem as a country, as the world, as the country, as a political, group, as a group of people like veterans or whatever group you are a part of, your family, you have to believe that there is a way out. And once you believe that, you'll start to okay, now you're not in defining mode. Now you're in problem solving mode. Then it's just a matter of time till you figure it out. It's a big Rubik's Cube of figuring it out, and eventually you will. No, I agree. I agree with you, bro. Optimism. I don't think that's a problem. It shouldn't be labeled as a problem where people, if they roll their eyes at being optimistic, wow, we need to talk. I need to have a conto sensing session with you. Yeah,
you should always be optimistic. Never. There's always a way to win or get out of it eventually, as long as, like you said, just keep moving forward and problem solving, and so you can control do your best to control your attitude. And I'm not saying that just as I've not been there before. I have.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, God, I don't want to get out of bed today. Now get your ass out of bed. All right. Keep moving forward. No, it's good. That's good, positive, and it falls in line with what even our podcast. What we do, me and Ian. We want to stay positive. We talked about some negative things, things that could be construed as negative, but in the end, it's what did you just say? Hey man, just stay positive, optimistic. Be optimistic in everything you do. That's all. That's awesome. I'm done. We're done. We can finish this. We can finish the episode now. Let's finish on that note.
No, you're right. You're right, though. I mean, I think that's been like a connecting theme of this podcast, which is pretty cool. And also the same thing you're saying about giving people a voice without having to form some narrative. Like, people do know my opinions, I think, when they read my social media. But for example, we had Dale Comstock on, who gave his opinion on what's going on in Iran and everything. And I would put Dale in the category of a guy, this is my opinion, how I interpret it, who kind of wants to see America be the world police. I am not one of those people. I'm on the total opposite end, like non-interventionist. But am I going to push back on him when he gives his opinion on that? No, because he's been there, he's done that, and I'd rather have him use this platform to give his point of view of things than have a debate on every little thing. So I'm with you on that. You know what I wanted to ask you about? So the book that you have out now, which is in front of me, is The Gun in the Sheath.
Gun in the Scythe.
Safe.
Yeah, Scythe.
I totally pronounced that wrong. Yeah. Gun in the Safe. And you have a second book in the works that'll be out really shortly. Tell us a little bit about it.
So my first book, The Gun in the Scythe, is a book of poetry. It's war poetry. When I was on my second deployment to Afghanistan, my dad sent me a poem called Safety by Rupert Brooke, and he was a World War I infantryman, a British guy. And there's a lot of World War. I carried that throughout all my deployments after that, and learned about a lot of other British war poets, and I got my degree in English literature and learned more and kind of took more of an interest in all of these old British World War I war poets. And eventually, years after I got out, I started to write war poetry of my own as a form of catharsis in trying to understand these experiences that I had. It's not really written for literary critics. I hope that anybody who can read it would like it, but it's very much written for myself and for other veterans who have gone through this stuff. It's not very complicated poetry. So my first one did a lot better than I thought it would. I didn't realize that veterans would actually ever read poetry. I wouldn't have thought that about myself before I even started writing the stuff.
And you're surprisingly not the only one. Leo Jenkins wrote a poetry book.
Yeah, and there's a couple other guys out there that are doing it. And I feel like there is a resurgence in GWAT poetry, and it's really just, as a literature nerd of myself, it's exciting and it's cool to see to actually compare World War I poetry to GWAT poetry and the differences can be obvious, like especially literary differences in structure and whatever, yada yada. But the similarities are really cool to see. You know, these transcendental ideas about war and violence that don't change over 100 years. You know, and super interesting for me to see that. But yeah, so my next book is called A Moment of Violence, and it's just further exploring the different facets of war and post-war life, and you know, all these different things. Like I said, you know, my experiences aren't nearly as lengthy as a lot of guys' experience in war, but it's been really healthy for me to unpack, you know, the combat experiences that I do have into these pages and onto the paper. You know, so then, you know, my next book probably come out within the next month or so. I self-publish, so it's just up to me. But I've really enjoyed doing it, and I've been really struck at how well the Gun in the Scythe has done, and I'm very excited to put out A Moment of Violence. Yeah, it's very helpful for me to articulate these ideas to myself, and that's where I start with my poetry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it come out. You have the rough draft in front of me, but a lot of you guys are really getting something out of doing this, including you, Chris, who just put out third book. So,
yeah, it's cathartic. It is cathartic. I didn't know there was another Ranger that knew the meaning of cathartic. Well done.
Yeah,
outstanding. It is. But to me, it's being optimistic in. I think there's other guys' stories out there, like Luke's, like Tom's, like Rob Jabber, like Scotty Guerin, like we got you've got so many things that have gone that got men and women have been through that they can utilize. That they can utilize as far as teaching and lessons learned to those that in the civilian world and also those going in the military about never giving up, about obstacles, about dealing with adversity. And it's the way of turning, just like I believe you're really doing with your poetry, Luke, utilizing stories of those that may have been through horrendous acts and utilizing that as a positive to help other people overcome just normal things in life, like when somebody forgets to put on the record button when we're doing the podcast. But it's not just to put it in perspective. It's just that everybody has this ability to overcome an obstacle in them. And here's some examples. Yes, it is at the extreme, but then I also have Ben Morgan in there who overcame alcoholism as a teenager to become a Ranger.
Right.
So it's like, so it's those kind of things positive. It doesn't always have to be like Ian and I always make fun of it. We made fun of today with you. It always have to be the worst, terrible thing out there. Partisan politics. The world's going to end. The left's killing the world. The right's killing the world. It's like, stop it. Here's something positive. Learn from it. We are still in a good state. We still have a tremendous country. We still are the greatest, to me, I think the greatest society in the world. And we have the ability to be optimistic even in the worst case scenarios. So, brother, I admire you, man. And that's why I believe more veterans, if you can, tell your stories out there, even if it's just at the bar. Hey, but being negative, not say, we lost 20 some guys. I get it. I get it. I've raced to and did cheers to fallen brothers as well. I get it. But let's go on and let's teach society how to overcome the worst, because you can do that. And it's amazing, man. And so you're doing a great job, bro. I wish I could do poetry. I can't write for shit. So
that's not true though, Chris, because you know what? I will always remember the article that you wrote. This honestly got me through times before I even hung out with you often. I don't think it's even up anymore, but the article you wrote about the woman coming up to you at the airport saying, hey, are you Tonto? Keep telling your truth, and that got you out of a suicidal state. I mean, when I read that, I still think about that story. So you could write. What are you talking about?
I guess that's not right. That to me is just the moment and feeling and being a real person. But I guess that's what Luke. I'm not a writer, so I don't know. If
you're a writer, but not a journalist.
Sure.
I mean, you've written 3 books.
Well, that's the thing, though. I'm going to butcher this, but Hemingway said, writing is easy. All you got to do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. And I feel like when you successfully do that, it moves people, and that's when you know that you are a success as a writer, is when you move people. So
no, you're right, Ian, and Luke, well put. I know, I guess so. This is me. This is real. Whether you want, it's like sitting behind a campfire and talking. That's what I'm doing in a book.
Yeah,
sitting at a campfire and we're just chatting. Here's what I got. Do. And then the editors, because I do very lucky to have a good publishing company. Then the editors get a hold of it and actually make it readable. But but then they also change a few things in there that they're not supposed to change. Like, no, 160th soar. It's not 160th soaring above. Yeah. But I appreciate you guys both saying that. Makes me feel good. But I will never feel like when I think of writer, I think of Ernest Hemingway. I think of Stephen King on the horror side. That's what I think as a writer, like a professional. But you're right. I'm just putting on paper and hoping some people read it and some people laugh at it, and it takes a little bit off my chest as well. So.
Well, what happened to that article? Because I truly loved that article, and it was something that I thought of that got me through several times.
Actually, it was written. I believe it was actually on Fox. Somebody on Fox wrote it, and it's out there somewhere, brother. It was an actual where I did an interview. I actually did an interview with Martha. Was she still with Martha McCallum at the time? And then what happens if the interview is good? One of the Fox journalists or media will actually write an article about
That's what it is then, because it's been a while since I've read it, but I'll always remember that because it just was one of those moments that makes you realize that, you're going to have an impact on people whether you realize it or not. You saying that this older woman coming up to you.
I remember that.
Yeah, not even in the mood to talk and just saying, hey, you're Tonto, keep speaking your truth. The fact that pulled you out of a dark place, it was powerful.
I was at Dallas DFW. I remember that. And it was right when everything first started. This was all new to me. It was right when the movie actually came out, right when that came out. And I didn't know how to adjust to any of that. I was having the hardest time, and it took me 3 years to finally adjust to it. But yeah, it made me feel good. Like, okay, well, people, all right, I can keep doing this. Whatever the hell I'm doing, I can keep doing it. But I felt such like a pretentious egomaniac asshole out there because of, you had to be in all this media, and that's not what I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel comfortable with it. And it made me feel like guys like Luke that were actually out there doing shit. Like, look at this. He did when he's out there on TV. They wanted the story out there, and like, that's not what we wanted at all. But here, what do you do? Do you say no when Michael Bay says, "Hey, I want to make a movie out of your book"? Or do you say? I mean, so it was tough. But I appreciate that, Ian. I remember that quite vividly. But it was a learning experience for me. Definitely was, and this made me a better person. And we probably wouldn't be having this podcast right now if that hadn't happened, man. So
and you don't even know who that woman was, right?
Nope. If I saw her again, I probably would remember. But I didn't ask her name. I was not in the mood. I was like on the road. I did not want to talk to anybody. I just remember her tapping me on the shoulder and asked me, I said, "Are you Tano?" And I was like going to roll my eyes again because I thought she was going to ask me about Hillary Clinton again. It's like, Jesus, I don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton anymore. But yeah, she said, just keep telling the truth. She goes, "I believe in you. Just keep telling your story."
It's amazing the little moments that can pull you up.
Yeah, you're right, brother. I'm smiling right now because I'd almost forgotten about that. God, that seems like just so long ago. But then it even feels like yesterday. And I even remember DFW right by the American Airlines Club, right there, right when you go through security. I remember there's a Starbucks right there too. And just tell Evan over there I'm still drinking Starbucks. Okay, all right.
I'll relay the message. Yeah.
And Everyday Grind still.
Hey, brother, when Everyday Grind, as soon as they get them a barista shop, I'll be stopping at Everyday Grind in Elkhorn too. But I just ordered another bag last week. Got it in the mail a couple days ago.
Yeah,
and
Josh is awesome. Great guy. But yeah, wrapping things up here, follow Luke on Twitter and Instagram, who is the best handle ever. On Twitter, it's lay_gingera, but it's LES_GINGERABLES.
It's like Les Miserables, but the ginger version, yeah.
And then on Instagram, Lay Gingera, but without the underscore. So which is ridiculous because more people would know you if you were Luke Ryan. You know.
Oh yeah, dude. No, I can't bring
followers.
I can't bring myself to change it though. You know.
No,
I love Les Miserables, bro. It's so good.
That's also like Rob O'Neill's got the huge following, but his name is Mick Huya, and it would probably be more if it was Rob. Everybody knows Rob O'Neill, but it's like Mick Huya.
We're all a bit stubborn in our own ways, you know. So.
Yeah. But once again, guys, wanted to mention Fort Scott Munitions. We love what they do. They've been sponsoring every single episode of the podcast. So many guys in this audience are shooters, they're hunters, and I think everybody has their opinion on what the best gun is, what the best handgun is, the best AR, and a lot of people don't talk about ammunition, and it's important, as Chris will tell you. Fort Scott is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammo that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue. What that means, it's going to leave devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammo was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. And this is exclusively what you use when you go to a Battleline tactical course.
This is what I have. Yeah, that's what I shoot, and actually, that's what I train with. That's what I have as my home defense ammo. I could spend 10 minutes like I usually do on it. I won't this time, but it's the best ammo out there by far. And if you're not going out there and giving it a shot, literally, you're really selling yourself short. You're making a mistake. Go give it a try, and then once you do, you're not going to go back to it. And as far as the 9mm ammo, home defense ammo, yeah, that's what you should have put in that handgun you have in your house. If you feel like you need one, just make sure you know how to use that thing. Come to a Battleline tactical course. We'll teach you how to use your handgun, but put that ammo in there and utilize it at least as your home defense ammo. The hunters already know it. You can go search Fort Scott Munitions, look at their YouTube, all the YouTube stuff they have out there, and you'll be able to see firsthand, even the gel tests they put out there on YouTube. Definitely go check them out. Yeah,
the Instagram is great too.
Yes,
they do some giveaways on there, so you guys really should follow them at Fort Scott Munitions. Use exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. We love what they do. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. And I can't stress enough that we really love this audience for the fact that we're only 3.5 months in on this podcast, and people are really supporting these sponsors. And Chris and I decided not to go the route of Patreon and all that. I'm not bashing anybody who does, but I figured let's keep this thing free. And people could support the sponsors if they want to support us. We do have a T-shirt in the works, though. That'll be up soon, right?
Yeah, actually, the first Ranger bat, John Mellema, American Trigger Pullers, that does do my apparel. Yeah, they're going to go ahead and do the podcast. I love ATP. I love American Trigger Pullers. You guys have enough out there at Black Rifle Coffee. You don't need Tano. I'm going to go first bat.
I got a ATP decanter, and it's awesome. It's legit.
Oh, dude, and they're awesome. And Alex Bailey, that Aussie out there, that crazy Aussie, I don't think he ever sleeps, is always coming up with great designs. But no, I love American Trigger Pullers. To me, that represents really what 275 is, the politically incorrect side of a 75th Ranger Regiment. I'm just the PG with us in the Battleline podcast. We're like their PG rated division. So that's us over there with the podcast, and then Chris Peranto and KPI and John 1513 and all that. They're fantastic guys. So
I didn't realize
that up in a week.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was Australian. That's awesome because and that's awesome that'll be up in a week because the guy who designed the shirt, Aaron Lauder, same guy who designed our graphic, he's in Australia and he does an awesome job. Yeah, he's great. He's the guy I go to for pretty much anything with graphics. We really appreciate you guys supporting the sponsors. If you have any questions for the show, we'll try to get to those on air. If you can keep them concise to just a few sentences, we'll get to what we can. It's battlelinepodcast@gmail.com. Anything else before we get out of here, man? Anything else that you're promoting? I think we hit on a bunch of stuff, but what could people expect to see at Coffee or Die in the coming months?
Oh man, we got a whole bunch of stuff in the pipe. I gotta look at a spreadsheet to tell you the answer to that one.
And so, you know what I gotta
got a lot
ask
of stuff. It's growing quick.
When you say you haven't met a bunch of guys, you've never met Marty in person. You said
Correct.
Never met Matt Best.
No, I have. Yeah.
Okay, because I've met Matt Best. I feel like I've met all these guys that you work with.
It'll change. I mean, I work remotely right now, so when I hit San Antonio, it just depends on like who's there at the time, and that'll change obviously when I move there and I'm working there all the time. Then then you meet everybody.
I remember I was actually at a Wilcow event at Emmett O'Looney's, and I walked outside, and Matt Best was, and he had nothing to do with this event. He just happened to be in New York for I think a UFC fight with Tim Kennedy.
Nice. And
he had a Black Rifle Coffee. It was like a windbreaker on.
Nice.
And this is when I knew him from Article 15.
Yeah.
And Black Rifle Coffee was this new thing. And overnight, it blew the fuck up. I mean, there is no bigger name really in this whole sphere of veteran-owned businesses. Everybody knows Black Rifle now. And he's doing something right, I have to say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they're growing quick, growing huge. I mean, part of it's, I think, because they take internal business just as seriously as the image side, which is what you generally see. But taking care of your own people, making sure all the practical day-to-day business stuff goes right, that's taken just as seriously. A lot of I think startups and different companies that also like maybe didn't exist 5-6 years ago. They want the quick benefit of a profit, and they want to look like they want to be successful in the media sphere, but they're not willing to put in the like all the day-to-day work that comes with running a business. And I mean, and I'm still pretty new. I mean, for everything that I know, there's 10 other things that people are doing. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine that is growing fast, and a lot of people are really passionate about it.
You have to give credit, and as much as I like to give him shit, and I saw JT at Texas Range Day, great. And I've known these guys for a while. Great. I give them a lot of shit, but I do consider them all friends. Really, though, I've worked with Evan Hafer, who to me I think is the brains behind the operational. And it's because I know how smart he is, because we used to train Afghanis in Kabul when under different contracts with the agency. Right. And no, he's the most genuinely nice guy in the world. He's brilliant. The dude is a closet smart guy. Really, I mean, he really is, and he is business savvy. Yep. And also he hit that coffee thing at the right. I mean, he hit the niche. I mean, sometimes you hit it at the right time, and he did. He hit it at the right time when there wasn't a lot out there, brand new. But also, you're right, on the business side, he was smart business. He started to learn the analogs of social media, when to post, when not to post. Who was following what when. You're right. A lot of guys just go out there and just throw shit out there and really don't pay attention to the little things. And actually, I learned as I've picked up even with my own personal stuff. And now that I've, Antano is branded. It is. I can't say it's not. I've actually learned from him of, okay, what do I need to do as far as on the little things on social media and also, it was at a good time too, when you didn't have to pay for exposure. Where Facebook and Twitter and Instagram now, it's controlled. You have to pay for that exposure because being organic, it's tough to get the followers you need to, unless you're super patient. To where in the past, you could get 150,000 followers within a week because you didn't have to pay for sponsor. You didn't have to sponsor an ad. It just went out. So hitting at the right time always helps too, and they did. BRC did, but Evan again. The smart guy.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about passion for coffee. It's not, serious passion for it, and a love for it, and that definitely bleeds out to the whole company and out through the media and out through everywhere. Is that passion and it's cool.
Well, they got the writing side good with you and Marty, and you couldn't ask for a better team. And Marty's awesome, dude. Love Marty to death. He's a tremendous individual. And he wrote a foreword on the Ranger Way when I wrote my second book. He wrote it's his on the cover.
Yep.
I was so proud to have him. It was when I had Marty on there. It was like I had Ernest Hemingway writing the foreward on my books. Like awesome. I get Marty Scovelin. There's my validation to Ranger Battalion that I'm a legitimate guy, because Marty 275 Ranger. I'm so proud to have him on there. So good job, guys. You're doing an awesome job. Good job, Luke.
Hell yeah. Well, Rangers lead the way.
All the way.
All the way.
And we'll end it with that.
All right, right on. Thanks for having me on, man.
No
Hey,
problem.
thanks.
Chris, thanks, man.
Yeah.
I think people are going to dig this.
Hey, brother, as long as you keep saying that after every episode, I'm happy. When you just now, if you don't say it, I'm gonna worry. So
People
you
are
better
going
say
to
it every time. Just
fucking
lie to
hate
me.
this. No.
All right. Hey, take care, guys. Go take your girlfriend out to dinner. She's been
Yeah, she's
sitting
just
out
been
there
sitting
all
here
day.
for like 2 hours.
Jesus, we need to get her on. I wanted to bring her on. I couldn't find that segue in to say something smart to get her on.
The thing I could have said is, as I said, they both look like they're 12 years old.
Oh yeah. Hey, going on 14.
Have fun,
Maybe
have fun, guys. I'll talk to you all later.
All right.
Appreciate
See
it.
you, man.
Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye bye.
That's all for this week's Battleline podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk, so make sure you're subscribed. And keep up with the show 24/7 on Facebook and Instagram at Battleline Podcast. Also on Twitter at Battleline Pod. As always, never quit.